This week on The Archive on Cinematic Sound Radio. Today, on this first show of 2018, I will be showcasing 6 new expanded and archival soundtracks released at the end of 2017. But before that, I will be playing music from the first major release of 2018, Michael Kamen's epic score to the 1991 film Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Then the great music continues with selections from James Horner's Titanic, Close Encounters of the Third Kind by John Williams, Casino Royale by Burt Bacharach, Die Another Day by David Arnold, and finally from 2 classic Jerry Goldsmith scores, Damnation Alley and The Russia House. My name is Jason Drury. Thank you very much for listening. Sit back, relax, and be enriched by this musical wealth on offer, and be none the poorer for it, as this week's archive from Cinematic Sound Radio begins now.
Streaming on the web since 1996, this is Cinematic Sound.
Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Cinematic Sound Radio's Archive. I'm Jason Drury, coming to you from the metropolis that is Ramsgate in Kent, England. Hello to our listeners at WROCK Radio, cinematicsound.net, and through iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Casts, TuneIn, Google Play, and where any other podcast provider is found. It's great to have you join us again for today's show. If you're listening to this program on iTunes, then please take the time to rate and review the show. It really helps get the show and Cinematic Sound Radio noticed. This version of Cinematic Sound Radio is dedicated to new releases and new recordings of older scores from film and television. For today's show, I have left the Cinematic Sound Radio shovel in the shed to concentrate on the new releases that came out at the end of 2017. And as you have heard, there were some real gems amongst them. I'll be showcasing 6 of them on today's show, as well as a release which came out while I was preparing this show in January 2018. And had no hesitation of wanting to include it here. This is a work of love. This has come from the heart. This is something that I really, really care about. Music is a real substance. It's a very powerful substance, and it's got to be taken seriously. That was Michael Kamen describing his music for Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, the first major expanded soundtrack release of 2018. This title has been one of the most sought after by film music collectors over the years. It truly is a holy grail of film music. It's a classic, old-fashioned symphonic score, which sadly 27 years down the line is a rare occurrence these days. Dramatic, exciting, intense, lyrical, what more can you say? If Eric Korngold had heard it, I'm sure he would have given it his seal of approval. So, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves from 1991, based on the legendary English folktale, directed by Kevin Reynolds and starring Kevin Costner in the title role, Morgan Freeman, Christian Slater, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, and with one of the great film-stealing performances of all time, the BAFTA award-winning Alan Rickman as the Sheriff of Nottingham. The score at 110 minutes in length is one of Kamen's longest, a lengthy work composed on a large scale with a very large orchestra with the assistance of 15 orchestrators. The 2 main themes of this film are iconic. The main title theme, also known as the Robin Hood theme, is one of the most familiar pieces of film music ever. The love theme is equally well known, particularly as Bryan Adams' single version stayed at number 1 in the UK charts for an amazing 16 weeks, 7 weeks on the Billboard Hot 100 in the United States, and 9 weeks atop the Canadian singles chart. There are so many highlights in this score, and so difficult to include all of them in a 20-minute suite. But by using the very useful cue breakdown in Intrada's album notes, I've been able to achieve a 20-minute custom suite for you to enjoy. It includes some familiar sections of the score and some of the 80 minutes of previously unreleased music from the set. The album includes music which I have been waiting to be released for years. The music for the final fight sequence of Robin Hood and the Sheriff, some of which I have put in to this custom suite. So finally, after 27 years of waiting, here is music from the Intrada release to the 1991 film Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Music composed and conducted by Michael Kamen. That was music from Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Music composed and conducted by Michael Kamen. Is available on a 2-CD set released in January 2018 from Intrada Records. And before we go on, I have this memory to share with you of the first time I saw Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. I took my mum to see the film at the Colton Cinema in Westgate, Kent. It's a wonderful cinema, really old-fashioned cinema, wonderful facilities. We sat down, the advert started, and one advert in particular came on. It was from a well-known British cereal company called Weetabix, and it was a pastiche of Robin Hood. It used the Robin Hood 1960s TV theme tune, you know, the one, Robin Hood, riding through the glen. It's a really funny advert. Have a look at it on YouTube, it's quite entertaining. Afterwards, my mum, bless her, turned to me and said, while the advert was on, I thought the film had started.
On the air and streaming on the web since 1996, this is Cinematic Sound.
Welcome back. Next up, we start on the releases which came out at the end of 2017. Going through them, one name stands out in his restoration work. Mike Matissino. Matissino worked on 4 of the albums you'll be hearing selections from today. The first is music from the new 4-CD set to mark the 20th anniversary of James Horner's 1997 Academy Award-winning score to Titanic. Directed, written, co-produced and co-edited by James Cameron, this is a fictional account of the sinking of the RMS Titanic. It stars Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet as members of different social classes who fall in love aboard the ship during its ill-fated maiden voyage. But unless you have been in the hull for 20 years, you know this already. To hear more details of the score and how James Horner and Kamen made up after what happened on Aliens in 1986 and how that song came about, have a listen to part 2 of my James Horner documentary series, which you can find on the Cinematic Sound Radio website. The 4-CD set produced by Matissino and Neil S. Bulk has Horner's award-winning iconic score on both discs 1 and 2, while additional music and alternate cues feature on disc 3, and the film's period source music, produced by British composer John Altman, is on disc 4. So there's plenty of material to make a reassessment, if you want, of this score. The album showcases Horner's dramatic music for Titanic's sinking in its complete form. But of the new material present, one piece stands out for me, and it is that piece that I'm going to play you from the set today. One of the biggest challenges of the score affected Horner's opening music and the scoring of the submersibles exploring the wreck of Titanic. The bagpipe-like performance of the Titanic theme, which would have bookended the film, was dropped, and Horner's 2.5 miles down cue for the underwater wreck, originally written to be more foreboding and suspenseful, was edited and dialed down to subtle background atmosphere music, and in the film only 3 minutes of his cue was used. This cue, 2.5 miles down, in its original form is 10.5 minutes in length, and it is a wonderful musical description of the Titanic wreck. It's another classic long cue, and yet again shows Horner's musical descriptive skills. From the first time I played it, I could not stop playing it. In my opinion, it is the soundtrack archival find of 2017, and as this show is called The Archive, it is a very appropriate place to play it. So, here is the cue 2.5 miles down from the 20th anniversary 4-CD set of James Horner's 1997 Academy Award-winning score to Titanic. That was 2.5 Miles Down from the 20th anniversary 4-CD set of James Horner's 1997 Academy Award-winning score to Titanic. The 4-CD 20th anniversary set was released over Christmas from La La Land Records.
On the air and streaming on the web since 1996, this is Cinematic Sound.
And welcome back to this special new releases show from the archive on Cinematic Sound Radio. I'm Jason Drury. Hope you're enjoying today's offering. Now, to complete the show's first half, here is another film music masterpiece released by La La Land over Christmas, which that man, Mike Manticino, was involved in its restoration and re-release. On the fourth archive show, I finished with music from John Williams' score to E.T. from 1982. 5 years earlier, in the same year as Star Wars, he composed what is regarded as another classic work, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Now, unless you have been in an even bigger hole and stuck there for 40 years, you surely must know that the film was written and directed by Steven Spielberg and starred Richard Dreyfuss, Linda Dillon, Terry Carr, Bob Balaban, Cary Guffey, and Francois Truffaut. It tells the story of Roy Neary, an everyday blue-collar worker in Indiana whose life changes after an encounter with an unidentified flying object. But you know all that, don't you? Now, the suite you're about to hear will feature some pieces never released until now, including an alternate version of the conversation which features the famous 5-note message motif, and a piece scored for the most controversial sequence of the film's special edition, when the viewer enters with Neary the mothership. The cue, entitled simply Inside, was recorded at the Symphony Hall in Boston in June 1980 and plays in the film without any other sound effects. The scene was taken out of the Ultimate Edition of the film in 2007. By the way, if you want to hear of Mike Manticino's work on the restoration of Close Encounters, I recommend you listen to Tim Burden's interview with Manticino on SoundCloud, a link of which I shall ask Eric to kindly put on the show's webpage. So to finish the first half, here is music from the original motion picture score, including some alternate versions of the score to Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Music composed and conducted by John Williams. The 2-CD set was released by La La Land Records.
on the web since 1996. This is Cinematic Sound.
And to start the second half of today's new release show on the archive on Cinematic Sound Radio, that was the main title theme of the 1967 spy comedy Casino Royale, composed by Burt Bacharach and performed by Herb Albert and his Tijuana Brass. The film was very loosely based on Ian Fleming's first James Bond novel, and of course was remade as a reboot of the proper Bond series starring Daniel Craig in 2006. The film starred David Niven as the original Bond, Sir James Bond, forced out of retirement to investigate the deaths and disappearances of international spies. He soon battles the mysterious Dr. Noah and Smersh. The film's tagline was, "Casino Royale is too much for one James Bond," and refers to Bond's ruse to mislead Smersh, in which 6 other agents are pretending to be James Bond, including characters played by Peter Sellers, Ursula Andress, and Barbara Bouchet. The film boasts 6 directors. John Huston, who also stars as M in the film, Ken Hughes, Joseph McGrath, Robert Parrish, Val Guest, and uncredited Robert Talmadge. Now, I watched some of this film over the Christmas period, and all I can say is it is a complete and utter mess. With 6 directors working on it, it's a definite case of too many cooks. Particularly at the end of the film, it's completely all over the place. The composer Burt Bacharach worked on the project for 2 years and found working on the film a difficult experience. Bacharach spotted the film at his home in Los Angeles with no guidance of any of the film's multiple directors. Despite all this, Bacharach produced a score which is by far the best thing to come out of this film, as well as a hit song, The Look of Love, performed by Dusty Springfield, with lyrics by Bacharach's regular collaborator, Hal David. The CD of the score has been released many times, but not sounding this good, thanks to the restoration and mastering skills of another engineer wizard, Chris Malone. Now, Chris rebuilt the score from the ground up, focusing on unintended technical anomalies rather than broadly applying a modern sound palette. The result is a CD which sounds equally as good in stereo for the original album tracks as it does for mono for the complete score tracks. It is an amazing achievement once again by Chris Malone, and it is an essential purchase for anyone who enjoys archival film music. And to prove this, here is more music from the 50th anniversary edition of the original motion picture soundtrack to Casino Royale. I've just played you the main title in stereo. Now you can hear a suite from some of the mono tracks of the album, engineered and restored so brilliantly by Chris Malone. The music is composed and conducted by Burt Bacharach. That was music from the 50th anniversary edition of the original motion picture score to Casino Royale. Music composed and conducted by Burt Bacharach. The CD of which is available from Quartet Records.
On the air and streaming on the web since 1996, this is Cinematic Sound.
Welcome back. Next up is more Bond music, but of a more recent and of a contrasting variety, and the third release from La La Land Records on today's show. Die Another Day from 2002 was the 20th spy film in the James Bond series, the actual James Bond series, and the fourth and final film to star Pierce Brosnan as the MI6 agent James Bond. The film follows Bond as he leads a mission to North Korea, during which he is betrayed, and after seemingly killing a rogue North Korean colonel, is captured and imprisoned. 14 months later, Bond is released as part of a prisoner exchange. Surmising that the mole is within British intelligence, he attempts to earn redemption by tracking down his betrayer and all those involved. Directed by Lee Tamahori, the film also starred Halle Berry, Toby Stephens, Rosalind Pike and Judi Dench. The less said about the cameo by Madonna, the better. This would be David Arnold's third score for the James Bond series after Tomorrow Never Dies in 1997 and The World Is Not Enough in 1999. His previous score was loaded with electronic effects. This work pushed the envelope in its use of technology with orchestra even further. From John Burlingame's book The Music of James Bond, this is Arnold explaining his approach. Where we've been doing things electronically with drums and guitars and percussive elements, I thought it would be interesting to try and make the orchestra perform in the same way. So we rehearse in orchestral style, but record the woodwinds, brass and strings separately, maintaining the dynamics that they had in rehearsal. This enables to have the brass section play backwards and forwards and throw it around the surrounds, while the rest of the orchestra apparently carries on playing. So you go from a normal orchestral performance to find that the brass section are playing backwards, or the strings have been chopped into tiny pieces and they are travelling around the cinema. Things like that are making use of the technology in a way which is interesting sonically. End quote. So what we get here from David Arnold is a score that serves the film well in its modernistic approach. However, like the Bond series itself, the electronic elements would be reined in when Arnold scored the series reboot, the other Casino Royale, in 2006. So here is music from the score to the 2002 James Bond film Die Another Day. The James Bond theme composed by Monty Norman, music composed by David Arnold, and orchestrated and conducted by Nicholas Dodd. That was music from the 2002 James Bond film Die Another Day. Music composed by David Arnold, the James Bond theme composed by Monty Norman, and orchestrated and conducted by Nicholas Dodd. And it's another great set released over Christmas from La La Land Records.
On the air and streaming on the web since 1996, this is Cinematic Sound.
Welcome back to the show. Next is the first of two releases composed by Jerry Goldsmith, which were released at the end of 2017. This first one is a real archival find. The music for Damnation Alley, the 1977 post-apocalyptic film directed by Jack Smite, loosely based on the novel of the same name by Roger Zelazny. A small band of survivors traverses a post-apocalyptic American landscape. An horrific nuclear assault leaves only 3 survivors at an underground military facility. Tanner, played by Jean-Michel Vincent, Denton, George Peppard, and Keegan Paul Winfield. They commandeer a special all-terrain Land Cruiser and head for Albany, New York, the only American city spared in the attack. As they travel through the desolate post-nuke wastelands, the soldiers pick up a woman, Dominic Sander, and an incorrigible teenager played by a young Jackie Earle Haley as they battle huge mutant insects, packs of survivors turned violent and feral, and brutal electrical storms that savage the already barren plains. This highly troubled production happened to be developed alongside a smaller Fox picture known as Star Wars. Goldsmith sought inspiration for his score from imaginative, if not entirely successful, special effects, and created an incredibly ferocious, but in just over 30 minutes, short action score for a large 90-piece orchestra with extra brass with violins intentionally tactiling, plus a complex array of electronics. The unique, dry, often brazen sound which Goldsmith created results in cues that are aggressive, intense, and powerful. The score has been a must-have for many film soundtrack aficionados over the years. It took years to find all the musical elements, but when they were unearthed, they were missing the essential synthesizer overdubs. So in stepped our good friend Mike Menticino again. Now, does this guy have a day off? And synth expert Lee Phillips. After transcribing the original keyboard lines, Phillips then tried to recreate as close as possible Goldsmith's original synth timbres, creating new synth stands which were sent to Menticino to incorporate into the final work. So what we have here for Damnation Alley is an original recording with a re-recorded element. Now, as I said earlier, the score is quite a short listen, but it's a classic example of the Goldsmith adage of less is more. The highlight being, and is part of the suite you're about to hear, the cue Don't Bug Me. If you ever wondered what it would be like to be attacked by giant scorpions and how it would sound musically, now here's your chance. So here finally, after 40 years of waiting, here is music from the original motion picture score for Damnation Alley. Music composed and conducted by Jerry Goldsmith, with synthesizer elements restored by Lee Phillips. That was music from the original motion picture score to the 1977 film Damnation Alley, music composed and conducted by Jerry Goldsmith, the CD of which is now available on Intrada Records, a real archival achievement from Lee Phillips and Mike Matissino. So now sadly we've now come to the end of this edition of the archive on Cinematic Sound Radio. I would like to thank WROCK Radio for putting this show on the airwaves. They're at WROCKradio.com. Feel free to reach out to Cinematic Sound Radio by emailing at cinematicsound@yahoo.com, and don't forget to visit cinematicsound.net to hear an archive version of this show and many, many years of previous programming. The show is also on iTunes, and if you're listening to us through iTunes, please rate and review the show. I would also like to thank Tim Burden for providing his voice on the bumpers and stingers you heard on the show, David Coscina for writing Cinematic Sound Radio's intro music, and of course Eric Woods for letting me loose on his station. I leave you today with music from the second of the two Jerry Goldsmith scores released at the end of 2017, this time of a 1990 vintage. The spy film The Russia House, directed by Frank Skepsey, with a screenplay by Tom Stoppard based on the John le Carre novel of the same name. The film starred Sean Connery, Michelle Pfeiffer, Roy Snyder, James Fox, Sean Mahoney, Klaus Maria Brandauer, and Ken Russell. 3 notebooks, supposedly containing Russian military secrets, are handed to a British publisher during a Russian book conference. The British Secret Service are naturally keen to learn if these notebooks are a genuine article. To this end, they enlist the help of a scruffy British publisher, Barley Blair, who has plenty of experience with Russia and Russians. Barley finds himself in a game more complex than he first thought when he digs into the origin of the notebooks. Goldsmith, fresh from his work on Total Recall, could not have scored a more contrasting film with this spy-cum-love story, scoring the movie with a jazz electronic orchestral fusion, and features one of the composer's most memorable themes. A theme that originated from his aborted score for Wall Street in 1986, and then his rejected electronic score for Alien Nation in 1988. In December 2017, Quartet Records released an expanded CD of the score of over 76 minutes, produced by our good friend Mike Matissino, with all 1,000 copies sold out in 4 days. The score is one of Jerry Goldsmith's most lyrical and mature people pictures scores. To achieve his musical vision, Goldsmith enlisted the services of Branford Marsalis on tenor sax, underpinned by the highly talented pianist Mike Lang, whose contribution to this score cannot be underestimated. The booklet included in this package features an in-depth look at the film and the music by British saxophonist, film music historian, author and all-round expert on the Russia House score, Dirk Wickenden, incorporating some new comments from pianist Mike Lang. Now, as I've said, this release sold out very quickly at the end of last year, and I do hope it gets a swift reissue for anyone who missed out. But for now, please look out for it on eBay. It is well worth chasing up. So to finish the show today, here is music from the original motion picture score to the 1990 film The Russia House. Music composed and conducted by Jerry Goldsmith, featuring the tenor sax of Branford Marsalis, the CD of which was released by Quartet Records. Thank you very much for listening. I do hope you enjoyed today's show, and until the next time I dig up more items for the Cinematic Sound Radio archive, from me, Jason Drury, is take care and happy listening.
Thank you for listening to Cinematic Sound Radio. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please email us at cinematicsound@yahoo.com. Don't forget to check us out at Cinematic Sound Radio at cinematicsound.net on the web, Sin Sound Radio on Twitter, and Cinematic Sound on Facebook. And if you listen to us on iTunes, why don't you take a moment right now and rate the show and write a brief review. All reviews help us get noticed on iTunes. And don't forget to tell all your friends about the program as well. Share the show on your favorite social media network. We really appreciate all the support. And don't forget to check out our affiliate at WROCK Radio at WROCKRadio.com.